What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of eXplain, where we engage the culture from a biblical perspective in a manner which glorifies God. Today, we're going to be looking at something very interesting. This is something that is actually potentially coming to theaters near you, I think. Or, I don't know, maybe it could just be streaming near you or near a computer that's near you. I don't know. It's a movie that is coming out. This movie is set to release tomorrow night. You may have heard something about it. It's been making some waves. This movie is called God and Country. God and Country. And it is, I guess it's billed to be a documentary that talks about why Christians should not, I don't know, for lack of a better term, why Christians should not engage in politics, or maybe why Christians should not import their worldview into politics. Their messaging on this has not been quite clear as to what exactly they're trying to accomplish. I actually think that's part of the play, but we'll get into that eventually. So anyway, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of this guy, Rob. I think his name's Rob Reiner. Yeah, Rob Reiner. He is I guess he's a big-time producer or a big-time director. I think he's a producer. I guess he's done some pretty big movies in the past. I'm not a huge movie guy. I mean, I know the big ones, but if you ask me who made those movies, good luck. I'm not going to be able to help you with that. Like I can barely remember that. Was it George Lucas that did Star Wars? I mean, really. I mean, that's about as far as my knowledge of producers go. I know John Cooper when he was talking about Rob Reiner, he rattled off a bunch of movies that he knew that Rob Reiner directed, or produced, or was involved in. So yeah, I mean, if you're interested in the other stuff that he did, that would be that would not be something that you would ask me about, because I have no idea. But apparently he is a big name in the movie business, and so he is releasing this documentary about Christian nationalism. And here's the ironic thing: Rob Reiner is not a Christian, and very boldly not a Christian. And so it is very interesting that Rob Reiner would put out a documentary on Christian nationalism and intricate details of how to have a Christian worldview. I am shocked. But anyway, let's look at this post from Rob Reiner. And this was released on February 13th. So that would be Tuesday, February 13th. This is what he says. In God and Country, some of the most respected, devout Christians tell us that Christian nationalism is not only a threat to democracy, but to Christianity itself. In theaters this Friday. Okay. Well, let's provide a little bit of background on this, I guess, before we jump in. So these most respected, this is the first thing I want to focus on, that first line there. Some of the most respected devout Christians. Now, I have a beef with that framing of these people that Rob Reiner put on his movie. Now, just fundamentally, let's think about it. If you wanted to be in a movie that had to do with Christian political theology, would you want to have, as the person directing that movie, would you want to have them be an atheist or agnostic or admittedly not Christian like Rob Reiner is, or Buddhist or Muslim or any of these other things? No, of course you wouldn't want to. If you were really a devout Christian, you would want to be part of a project that involved a Christian, right? You would want to be part of a project led by a Christian on Christian political engagement, right? So I have a beef with that framing of the issue. I don't know if these people are well-respected, devout Christians. So let me tell you who they are. So the people who were featured in this, among others, one of them was Russell Moore. Russell Moore, we've talked about on this podcast before. I cannot in good faith recommend the things that Russell Moore is saying these days. Russell Moore just released, you may remember the Alistair Begg episode that we did a couple weeks ago. Russell Moore released after that a very confusing article about how to deal with situations like Alistair Begg, just introducing more confusion into the Christian world where there should be clarity. And also, you may remember the episode that we did from a few, more than a few months ago now, about how Russell Moore hates Pilgrim's Progress, doesn't like Pilgrim's Progress, and doesn't like the Puritans, and doesn't like John Bunyan. I mean, so he's introducing these ideas, or rather, I guess you could say, coming after these ideas that should be orthodox and should be clear to Christians. And I think his involvement in this movie is not a plus. That's not something to be proud of. And I can't really say, of course, I don't want to say that Russell Moore is not a Christian, but at the very least, he is doing a lot more damage than good, and he needs to come to his senses in repentance, at the very least. All right. Another guy that's on this that's in this movie is David French. David French, for all the stuff that Russell Moore has done, where you can see his face, like the videos, the podcasts, and things like that. David French has done just as much with his pen and paper, with his keyboard, I guess these days, writing. David French writes articles all the time, and the joke about David French is that so often in I guess you could say in his articles, he does this thing where he punches right, they call it, punches right, meaning he only beats up on people who are more conservative than he is. He never beats up on people that are more liberal than him, right? So that's one thing that David French does. I mean, some of the things that he said. I mean, he said that the transgender drag queen story hour was I think his framing of it was that it was a blessing of religious liberty or something like that, or something that comes along with religious liberty, which is just completely off base. Again, these are the people, if you watch this movie, that you're going to be getting your political advice from, that are supposedly devout, well-respected Christians. Two other guys that are on this, that are on this movie, are Phil Vischer and Sky Jethani. Both of them come from the Holy Post podcast. So again, I take issue with the framing of there being these guys being devout, well-respected Christians. I think a lot of people lost a lot of respect for these people over the past couple of years with all the issues that they've gone completely the wrong direction with. So let that be said, okay? But as we move on in this post, so Rob Reiner says, some of the most respected devout Christians tell us that Christian nationalism is not only a threat to democracy, but to Christianity itself. Okay, now I want to stop here and let's talk about what Christian nationalism is, okay? And this is a little bit of a sticky subject for me, because if you asked me, Troy, are you a Christian nationalist? I would say no. No, I'm not. And I think that there are misrepresentations everywhere as far as what this God and Country movie is attempting to do, because it's attempting to take people and frame them as Christian nationalists and then say those Christian nationalists are a threat to democracy. Okay? They're a threat to democracy. But here's the thing. This is the secret that they're not going to tell you, is that they want to take these people who are just biblically conservative, label them as Christian nationalists. Those people who, like I just said, those people who believe that Christ is Lord of all things, big and small, right? Those people who believe that Christ's lordship should impact the way that they live on a daily basis, they want to take all of those people who hold the biblical Christian principles, and put them in the category of Christian nationalist, right? And my case in point for this is the fact that you have guys like Jeff Durbin and James White down at Apologia Church who have said that they would reject the label of Christian nationalist. You have John Cooper, who has said that he rejects that label of Christian nationalist. You have the guys over at G3. They come at it from even a slightly different angle, but they reject the label of Christian nationalist. Josh Bice, Scott Aniel, I guess, Virgil Walker, like all those guys, they reject the label of Christian nationalist. Owen Strahan, I know he's not like employed by G3 or anything, but he's friends with all those guys. But all those guys would reject the label of Christian nationalist, and they would probably do it, most of them, for the same reason as me. I think it's not helpful framing of the issue. I don't think it accurately represents the words Christian nationalist. I don't think that accurately represents what we're trying to do as Christians. And so I would, and I think that on top of that, the world looks at that label with a certain sort of disdain. So I think that just becomes an obstacle to the way that we handle things, right? Especially because they end up grouping you in with other people who may actually be holding to some doctrines that are not right, that are not good, that are not biblical. Okay, but they don't care about that. They don't care if they're grouping you in with people who don't hold to biblical orthodoxy at all. They're going to take you because you're a conservative Christian and lump you in with the Christian nationalist with that label Christian nationalist, whether you like it or not. And then here's the other thing that they're going to do. So I know of people who I respect their theological beliefs and theological opinions and the views that they take, and I would line up with them theologically on pretty much everything, but they do accept the label of Christian nationalists. Guys like William Wolfe, guys like Joel Webbin, solid Christian guys. I really do love and support their ministries, and the way that so they do accept that label of Christian nationalist, right? They say, even like Joel Webbin, he said, I don't love the label, but if I have to accept the label, then I have to accept the label, right? That's the way that he frames it, which I think is good. That's the way that he looks at it. That's fine. I have no issues with him viewing it in that light. But here's the problem. What they're doing is they're taking people like Josh Bice or like Jeff Durbin or James White or people like that. People like myself, I would fall into that camp, who say, I don't want to be called a Christian nationalist because I don't think I don't think it really helps move the needle forward. I don't really think it helps move the needle anywhere. That's really the only reason why I wouldn't call myself that. So they take people like that, and then they say, okay, these people are Christian nationalists, even though they're telling us that they're not, right? Which I think is ironic, because these are the same people who say you can decide what race you are, you can decide what ethnicity you are, you can decide what gender you are, you can decide how old you are, you can decide what species you are. You could just be anything you want. You could just be anything that you'd like to be. Right? Like, these are the same people who say that. But then when they say you're a Christian nationalist, and people like me, I say, no, I'm not. They say, no, you are. We're not going to let you decide. What you say and what you believe fits the description of Christian nationalist. Yeah, but that doesn't apply anywhere else in their in their logical reasoning. That doesn't apply anywhere else. With any of those other things, right? So I think that's ironic, but that's a rabbit trail. So they take people like James White, like Jeff Durbin, or even like a guy like Josh Bice, who they're theologically conservative, biblically faithful, right? And then even though those people say we don't want to be called Christian nationalists, they say, no, you're Christian nationalists. And then they group them in with this great big giant group of people that they call Christian nationalists. And part of that group is people like Joel Webbin, people like William Wolfe, people who are solid Christian guys. And then they say, these people are a threat to democracy. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? These people are... Have you watched anything that Joel Webbin puts out? I don't think he's a threat to America. I think he'd actually help us a lot. Have you read any of the things that William Wolfe puts out? I don't think he would hurt America. I think he would help us a lot. I think we need the help. See, here's the problem. When you take a group of people who are conservative Christians, right? Just that's what it is. They want to take all conservative Christians and say all these people are Christian nationalists and all these people are a threat to America. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. And they take all these people and they want to group them in one group like that and say these people are a threat. And then you know what happens? People actually start to view them as a threat. People actually start to view people like me or like anybody else who holds to just biblical beliefs, right? A biblical viewpoint, the fact that that we believe that Christ is Lord over all things and that should impact the way that we live. They want to take people like that and label them as a threat. And so then people start to actually look at these people, at people like me, as a threat. And that's what this movie is trying to accomplish. I mean, don't think that they don't know what they're doing. And that's the difficult part about it. This is the part that bothers me, is if you read Ephesians 4, it is very clear that unity ought to be centered around the truth. Christian unity ought to be centered around the truth, right? And so this is the thing. People want to look at conservative Christians and say, you guys are being divisive because you guys don't make us feel good. Right? That's what they want to say. When in reality, conservative Christians, people who hold to a biblical perspective on the world, they're just standing on the truth. Okay, so in reality, it's the people who don't stand on the truth that are not being unified. Like, for example, the Christians, supposed Christians, that would have the audacity to join up with someone who's not even a Christian and produce a movie slandering their supposed brothers and sisters. Okay, that's not unity. That's not promoting unity. These are the people. The people, if you watch that movie, God and Country, the people that you see on that movie, God and Country, those people are the people who are being divisive. Don't let them tell you otherwise. They didn't have to put out a movie slandering their brothers and sisters in Christ, but they did. They chose to not pursue unity. They chose to not stand up for the truth. Do you really believe that Christ's lordship impacts every part of your life? Because you're certainly not acting like it if you're going to say, yeah, Christ is Lord over all things except politics. Like I just heard a lot of two of these same people that are featured in this movie, David French and Russell Moore, are putting out a curriculum that basically says, Christian, you can't understand politics. You can't understand how to get engaged in the culture. You can't understand how to engage the culture for Christ. You can't understand how to do this from a biblical worldview. And basically it's like the conclusion is don't even try. Don't even try. So really what this boils down to is the people who made this movie, God and Country, they don't like the fact that that Christians are speaking out, that Christians are allowing the idea of Christ's lordship to influence the way that they live. They don't like that. They don't like that. And so instead of maybe talking to these people that they disagree with, or instead of, I know that a lot of times, the people who are conservative Christians, they'll try to reach out to people like this to try and get them to engage in a conversation, and it doesn't usually seem to go well, and it doesn't happen usually. Okay, and so rather than these people who are going to be in this movie, God and Country, rather than them connecting with these conservative Christians and starting to have a conversation, And why are you coming at it this way? Well, let me show you in the scriptures where it says that we should come at it that way, right? Rather than doing that, they just put out a video, put out a movie, documentary, slandering these people to a point where, you know what? Like, this is the thing. It may not seem bad to you that conservative Christians get labeled as a threat to democracy or whatever. But that is a big deal, because people start to actually view Christians, conservative Christians, as a threat to democracy as a result of things like this, right? I mean, you put something out and it spreads far and wide, that influences people's worldview. And so, you know what? At the very least, what this movie is going to do is it's going to attempt to push the needle in a certain direction, away from Christians who believe that Christ has lordship over all. So you know what? This is the thing. To those of you who were in that movie from God and Country, you may think that this is not going to do anything, that this is not going to affect anything. And honestly, I really hope it doesn't. I really hope that people can by now stand up and say, these people are ridiculous to be slandering these people who are biblically faithful, right? I really hope that that's what ends up coming of this. But you know what? If you succeed in your mission to label conservative Christians as a threat to democracy, when the government labels us as threats and then starts to come after us and locks us up, and hopefully not, but even starts to kill some conservative Christians who stand on the scriptures, our blood will be on your hands. You're labeling yourself as a Christian, and then you're just smashing these other Christians who have who, when you look into their ministry, they are the ones who actually have a biblical perspective and a biblical worldview. So to those of us who are just normal people, right? I'm just a normal person, right? What do we do? What do we do when we see something like this? Well, the scriptures clearly say that that you are not supposed to bear false witness against your neighbor, for example, right? I couldn't help, you watching Steve's podcast on Tuesday, where he was talking about how lying is like an act of war, right? And so make no mistake, when people like this lie about you and lie about your beliefs and misrepresent you intentionally, that's an act of war. They are waging war on you and me. People who just want to follow the scriptures. People who just want to recognize that Christ is Lord over all things, and that should impact the way that we live. All right. So when you see this movie, God and Country, come out, you're probably gonna see a lot of different things about it over the next couple of days and weeks. But be encouraged, because no matter what these people say, Christ is still on the throne. Christ still is Lord, and there is nothing they can do, professed Christians or not, to stop that. All right? Have a great week. We'll see you next time.